Thank you. So my name is Attila Mong. I come from Hungary, and thank you for the compliment. I think it's really an interesting website I will speak very briefly about. I'm originally an investigative journalist and now working mainly for this Hungarian site, and I will show you how I think we implement the methods of open journalism. I will speak about three things: how our approach is different, I think, from the traditional media, how the content is made in a different way, and how the operation is also affected by open journalism. So I will start with three images of newsrooms, which pretty much represent my own career, for the better or for the worse. This is how I started, basically. I was in a very traditional newsroom, radio, TV, print journalism. Of course, I caricature. I would say it's an ivory tower. Looking back from now, it was pretty much an ivory tower. And then I also worked for a newspaper which I would qualify as a click factory. So we were producing the biggest number of clicks per day for an online newspaper. And this is our newsroom today. Atlatszo is a small organization which was founded 3 years ago. It means transparency in English, and it's a mix of Transparency International, so an anti-corruption watchdog, and ProPublica, so an investigative journalism site. And I like very much this picture because it shows that we are much more like a verification crime scene investigator team rather than journalists. Among the couple of people who work for the newspaper or for the site, there are journalists, lawyers, activists, volunteers, and we don't have an office, basically. We rent just a small room for editorial team meetings. Otherwise, we don't have the money as well, so we are funded by big organizations, but we live very much in the streets of Budapest, like this picture shows. So our self-definition is already different from a newspaper. We define ourselves as an investigative journalism site and anti-corruption transparency watchdog. And I very often say that we are not in the news business, or not necessarily only and exclusively in the news business, because what we are saying that we are investigating corruption-related topics, but we are also working on solutions in terms of anti-corruption and transparency, and we are advocating legislative changes in terms of corruption and transparency and media freedom and source protection. And we are also a company, a non-profit limited company, which defines in a lot of ways how we are operated. So, and we have a very activist approach. There are a couple of topics and a couple of issues where we don't consider ourselves only journalists, but we are activists. It's in terms of investigative journalism, whistleblower protection, source protection, media freedom. We were the organization which promoted the change of source protection legislation in Hungary, and we went to the Constitutional Court and we made the change, the necessary change. So how the content is different, and that's pretty much what I consider open journalism is our site. We are operating different platforms, and we are working new platforms which will empower our audience to be part of the content. So they are open platforms, and our audience can come to these platforms and contribute to the content we made, how they can do it. We are operating a freedom of information request machine. It's a very simple tool, very simple platform with a very complicated back office. The average citizen should only type a very simple question: how much my community spends each year on cars or petrol or coffee or salaries, and the platform will create the official request based on the Hungarian Freedom of Information legislation. And all the requests, all the replies, all the refusals, which are eventually, so requests refused by the government, are public. So everybody can see all this, everything is public. And we give legal assistance to the audience. So our audience, our readers who file freedom of information requests. And also we train NGOs, we train the people how to file freedom of information requests. And also, it's a very activist approach. We go to the police in case there is a government official who withholds information against the law. So if we have a court decision saying that some information is public, we go to and file criminal complaint. That was one of our campaigns against the head of the public media organization in Hungary. We went to the police and we said, he is withholding public information, do investigate on the basis of the Hungarian legislation. We have another platform, some of you might know the ipaidbribe.com, the Indian version. So every citizen can file very freely their corruption-related stories. There is a very simple legal filtering, of course, because we want to avoid defamation and libel cases, but otherwise these corruption stories are public very quickly, and some of these stories are the basis for our investigations. So we continue the investigations if the stories are worth, so we send reporters to cities and towns and places to investigate. And also, of course, we have a leaking platform, a secure, anonymous leaking platform developed by the Global Leaks, and we have a lot of tips and documents which we get from our audience. So we use crowdsourcing, we use a lot of volunteers. We have volunteers who give expert advice. So we have auditor volunteers or financial advisors who come to us and help verify our content and help enrich the content, and we organize a lot of meetups and roundtable events, of course. And the operation is very much influenced by this openness to our audience, because we offer different levels of activism for our readers, our audience. Of course, they can like, it's the easiest way of activism, but they can contribute with money, so they can feel that they are part of the whole organization. They can file freedom of information requests, they can leak, and they can tell their own stories about corruption. And we say that we are looking for subscribers or members. So we want our audience to feel that they are part of the whole game, they are part of the content, and they are part of the financing as well. So our value proposition in very quick, that we are the professional verification and investigator team. So turn to us if you have stories, turn to us if you have problems. We will do the investigations, but we will continue with the issues. So we will represent anti-corruption, and we will work on solutions. And I think this is also a journalistic responsibility, that we engage an active public debate about the issues which we find important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attila. You know, it's remarkable to me how many aspects your organization has, and I think it's a terrific example of something that is important about open journalism that we haven't spoken to yet, and that is that there are these auxiliary organizations that do not define themselves, or at least define themselves solely, some not at all, as journalism organizations, but they're part of this transparency movement. I know there's one in the United States called the Sunlight Foundation, whose sole purpose really is to try to ensure that documents are made available, and that so your combination of investigation and verification and activism is a very interesting one, and I'm sure people will want to make more comments on that. So we're going to move to the other side of the table for our next presentation.
I put only one question for Attila. I mean, just what is your definition of voluntary? I mean, is it someone who is not paid for the thing? Or?
Yeah, so we have a couple of 100 volunteers. We make a contract with them. We don't pay, and we are on a contractual volunteering. We have to prove that we have a contract with the volunteers according to the Hungarian law, and we advertise our needs. We need financial advice. We need translation. We use a lot of volunteers for translating, and when, for example, we received a huge amount of documents from a local municipality in paper, we use those volunteers